All right, live from LA. This is Purple Politics, brought to you by Purple Banter. We're out here today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome.
So, it's getting to be a kind of a wild week in politics. Um, we have not been with you in a bit. We've been very busy on some other things. We're going to get better at doing this. Once we get set up, we're like ready to rock.
Yeah, we're getting comfortable. We're getting in our zone, finding our mojo, and we'll be consistent soon.
So, what are we going to start off with today? Which one do you want to go with?
There's a lot of hot topics.
Should we start with the Roe versus Wade stuff?
I mean, if you really want to get me mad, sure. We can start with that.
So there has been a leaked document that it looks like the Supreme Court is in position and agreement to reverse Roe versus Wade.
You know, a lot of Trump's appointees were really, primed for this moment right now.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things that makes me realize how important the presidential elections are when it comes to some of the constitutional stuff. This is certainly one of those moments that is working heavily in favor of Republicans. Democrats are kind of feeling, in a sense, like the punishment or the misery.
Women across the country are feeling this one.
Yeah.
You don't understand, but that's okay. But you can go ahead and make decisions. And this is, definitely a topic that we do not see eye to eye on here on Purple Politics. And there's definitely a couple of those topics where we have some heated arguments because our experiences, our beliefs have led us to have different political views. And that is okay.
Yeah, I'll kind of let you start off on the sounding board with like, what are your feelings, your emotions? What kind of processes are you going to, and what are you hearing today?
Yeah. So again, this conversation and Roe versus Wade is really about giving states back the ability to make those decisions for themselves rather than having, federal kind of restrictions around it. However, we know those states. We know you, Texas. We know what you're about to do. And so my heart is with the women there who are, these young women, who are going to be put in a very tough situation where they're going to have to find alternate and unsafe options for abortions. And that's what worries me, is that there won't be any safe option. And what's funny is that Texas is like, well, we're going to kill anyone that, helps with these abortions. It's like, oh, so pro-life, but yet quick to put someone on the death row. You know what I mean? It's just, there's all this talk about pro-life. We care about this fetus. What is frustrating to me is that there are thousands of people that are homeless. There are thousands of children in the foster care system. There's so many issues with individuals that are below the federal poverty line. There aren't enough resources. And so when I hear that argument, for me, it's like, if you really were pro-life, then you would also address these other issues, right? You would think about actually taking care of the people who are here. But that's just not, again, for me, it's like, this is really just Republicans' way of enforcing their faith and their beliefs onto everybody else, particularly poor women.
Jazz, you can come in.
Oh. Jazz, you can come in. No, you can come in. Come in. We got my girl out here. She's on my team. We got my girl out here. Jazzy Jazz in the house.
We're just getting into the Roe versus Wade stuff.
Yeah, we're about to fist fight. No, just kidding.
So,
there's stuff in the fridge if you want some.
So I think this is an interesting time where I do see a lot of the left media pointing towards evangelicals in this moment, saying, you're placing your religious beliefs on me. Coming from someone a little bit more on the right, which really comes to like a constitutional component of this, I don't think that human life always has to do with religion. the idea of like, sovereignty of one's body, the ability to have freedom, peace, happiness, and success. Now, I think can be foundational in Christianity, but I think it can live outside of the scope of the Christian faith. So, and we see that within like a lot of our laws. Like, not all of our laws are built on this idea of like the Ten Commandments. They're built on these laws that are humane and also like there's like for example there's a lot of things like you can take the like Lord's name in vain and that's not against the law, but and that's okay because I think that there's things that it's all right for things to be immoral and be allowed. Now, when it comes to abortion, I think what's so difficult about this particular topic in general is both sides are picking their option of it really comes down to, are you in support of a female or are you in support of the fetus, right? That's really the tug of war. Now, what I think is inappropriate about that is I believe we should be looking at this in the context of these are two individuals that we need to discuss.
And we need to also make sure that the woman who is giving the life is taken care of and is safe.
Yeah.
In order for her ability to even continue to give life in the future. And so to take that right away from her, to say that like your uterus is no longer your decision. It's a governmental decision on what happens to your uterus. You have no control over what happens when you need the appropriate medical services to make a decision for yourself and for your life and for your future babies.
Right. And I think like the left has always stood by that context, right? Where it's saying this is my body, my choice. Now, what is unfortunate,
which just to let you know, during this whole COVID thing, the right loved spouting that.
Well, unfortunately, the left has lost that argument in the last 2.5 years, where they don't care about my body, my choice when it's not convenient to their agenda. And so, and I'm just talking about like left media in this particular context, where the left media is no longer going to be given that grace in this conversation, because when there was pregnant females that didn't want to get the vaccine, it didn't matter. And so it's unfortunate that the left has no longer been able to prove that claim matters in its entirety.
And I get
within that context.
I get that. And I think that, this is one area where I do believe the left kind of, again, they're spouting my body, my choice. But when it did come down to the vaccine, it was like, oh no, it's not your choice. And it's about the community. It's like, actually, the vaccine only really protects you.
Yeah. And we should give, in that context, it's like, well, that mother was making a choice on their child's behalf.
And that's their right. And the right would say just the same thing. That is that individual's right to choose what happens to their physical body.
Right.
It is a woman's choice what happens to her physical body.
No.
And so it's funny that the right will use that to say, well, this is my body, my thing. But when it comes to this specific issue, that's where religion plays that role in our government, in our policies, and the expectation. It's a religious thing. Would you not say that abortion has a lot to do with religion and faith, and like, the people who are really pushing the pro-life movement are people of strong faith?
Well, I think the sanctity of life is foundational within faith, but it's also inherent within the human condition to care about people. And so,
but this is why we have the separation of church and state. And for your congregation, right. In your community, you can do what you want. you can have your faith, you can have these beliefs, but when it comes to the government telling you what faith to have or what to do with your uterus, and I'm telling you, they're not doing that to any man.
Right.
They're not telling any man, don't even touch a man's gun, even though it's the leading cause of death for children. But don't you dare touch a man's gun, even though people are dying from that. What about those lives? What about children's lives that are dying from gun violence?
Right.
But don't you dare touch the right's guns. But that's killing people too. But they're not talking about that. What about those lives?
Right.
Like, where's the pro-life?
That's where the rights lost a lot of confidence and doesn't deserve that breadth of space, where they have proven again and again that they're not building a system to allow a platform for success for the child once it's out in the world. Now, constitutionally, where this becomes kind of more confusing is the fact that the Constitution is there to protect the individual that's unheard, right, in this space. And so the rights argument towards this would be saying that when is life there, and in that moment, who is there to speak for the life of the unborn at that time frame?
Right. But it's just so hypocritical because they're over here trying to speak for unborn fetuses, yet the children that are dying in school shootings, the children who are dying due to gun violence, the people who are dying to, what about those people? They don't care about their voice.
Sure. Yeah.
That's where, like, you can't say that you care about the unheard when you are not giving two shits about the unheard right now that are living right now. So it's just it's hypocritical to me.
And what I guess the rights counterpoint to that would say, by limiting the government's ability to infringe on all these other things, but
the right loves ending government. The right hates government infringing on them all the time, right? That's like the big thing.
Right.
But when it's a woman, that's okay though. Then we can all infringe on her rights.
No, but what they're
This is why the right is so like.
But the confusing and the thing that'll be ongoing of why abortion will always be a hot topic till the end of time is the fact that it's within the context of there's the right of the female, but then there's also an unborn child that has rights too. And so we're just trying to define when those rights start.
Yeah, when you can breathe and you're given life.
Right. And so some people would say that it's at a heartbeat at 5 weeks.
Who I know, but that's who's saying that? Who's saying that?
I mean, a lot of people that would be looking at life in the context of what science would deem it to be as life beginning.
It's just so funny because they would be willing to put the woman's life at risk. They don't, we can risk her life. We don't give 2 cents, we don't give 2 fucks about her life. But that child that's not here, we care about that. That's what's so hypocritical. The lives are actually here. The unheard voices are not cared for.
But what the counter argument of the right, where when a woman is screaming, "I don't have a choice, I need to have an abortion," the deep right would say the choice was made while you were
man
while
entered.
while you were having sex. So as we don't like to talk about choices, we like to talk about the choices of ending the fetus's existence. We're not talking also about the choice of engaging in sex that does
and
create the baby.
let's definitely not talk about the man whose sperm created that fetus. No conversation around them and their obligations and what they need to do. None of that. Again, it's always on the woman.
Right. But I do think that's where we kind of have to chew gum and walk at the same time in this argument, where we need to push towards a society that is building towards a family unit that actually can breathe life into this environment. I will say it till I'm blue in the face. The biggest problem in the United States culture right now is men not standing up for their family, not being a part of the process of a child's development, and not doing what is necessary in order to actually emotionally, physically, and financially provide. Like, the absence of fathers is the true pandemic that we have in culture right now. And so if a female chooses to abort a child, I do put that blame on that man every single time, because usually when a female has to make a decision, am I going to abort this child? It's because there seems like there's no other option available. And why? If you have a teammate, even if you're broke as shit, if you have a teammate that you trust in and love with and are in love with, that baby's coming out.
Yeah.
Because you'll be like, yo, this is dope. I'm excited. Not perfect time, but we're doing
You're gonna make it work because you have a teammate in it. But we can agree on that. Like, oftentimes that's not the situation, right? And then again, there's very unique situations as well.
So what if we did a thing like this? If a female has to abort their child and does it unlawfully in this new context of, like, in Texas, the man goes to jail.
That's not gonna happen. That's the thing.
Like, if you're a father that had an aborted child,
always
you go to
gets
jail.
away. But that's the reality of America, is that the men can get away with it, right? This is why there's, you could be a man, you can go give Viagra easily, but it's a process to get birth control, right? These systems are created to be easier for men. So the system is not going to come after a man. That's why there's no mention of the repercussions on the man. The blame goes to the women or to the physician.
I agree that all the blame currently goes to the female. Yes. I actually think pretty much wholeheartedly all the blame's going to the female, when I do believe that this is more like these are more cultural repercussions that are creating a scenario where the child isn't going to grow up in a favorable environment.
And the only time I would support this pro-life movement is if there were enough resources for families, if there was enough resources for mothers, adequate paid time off for their pregnancy, enough time to be able to heal and to get paid while doing it, you know what I mean? And the appropriate insurances and childcare. Childcare shouldn't be costing half of your wage. If half your wage is going to your rent and half your wage is going to childcare, what's left for the family? So there's these reasonings, right, of why women are getting these abortions, right? The lack of support, the lack of resources.
Well, the pressure that you're under during pregnancy.
The cost of childbearing and the cost of giving and having a child are so ridiculous. It's like, the woman is kind of sometimes put in a space where it's like, if I can't create a good life for this kid, then I'm adding another kid to the system. I'm adding another kid to the streets. I'm adding myself potentially to the streets. I can't help anyone in those situations.
Yeah.
And so they're thinking about their future children and being able to create a sustainable and a healthy home. It's like...
Yeah. What I think... so I agree with you on all of that. And that's why one of the things that I think is actually being left out of some of the discussion broadly is, either way, this is a disaster, right? So...
It's not if we could just keep things.
But what I'm trying to say is that the reason it's still a disaster, that even if we have a system that doesn't support the child's progression, like with a good education, with the right services, with the right home,
housing, childcare, yes.
Right. So we're just talking about, like, well, are we going to abort the fetus, or are we going to let the mother live a free life
and live jail?
But unfortunately, even in a system where a child's getting aborted, that mom still, like, that's not a great situation for that mother. Like,
no, it's a tough decision you have to make.
We all want life, and so it's like we're not solving the problem by letting the child even. Once the child's aborted, the problem isn't really resolved because there was life lost, and like that's going to be felt forever.
I don't think that you would ever understand that. So for you to make such a claim, you don't understand that feeling, that there's no physical way you could. So you're making these assumptions on women and how their bodies work and how they move forward, and I just don't think that that's really your place to be able to understand and make statements like that.
Well, but I say it from an anecdotal place where it's like I've had friends that have lost children during childbirth, and both parents feel a immense amount of mourning.
Yeah, no, I get
So
that.
like when you
Have a team and you're planning it and this is what you want and it makes sense in your life, of course that's devastating.
yeah.
But when you've been raped, or when you are not in a position in life to carry a child, or you have other health issues that prohibit you, or you don't know, they might be harmed for having a child. You don't know what their situation is. That's the thing, is that you don't actually know what's going on in that person's life to make such a big decision on their behalf. And we have to trust people to make the best decision for their well-being. And that's at the mindset, I believe, of every woman. They're not making these decisions because they're like, oh, I don't want it. It's like, shoot, like, it's a tough call.
Yeah. And so I think the one potentially positive thing that can come from this is the fact that our culture needs to wake the fuck up and realize that people need to step up. Like, we have to start supporting kids. We have to look into our child welfare systems. Our foster youth are right now f***ed. If you are in the child foster care system in LA County, you're screwed. These systems are horrible. And so
to create a policy that might make the system overloaded even more, it's like,
well, for
crazy
California,
to me
this will
to
never
think.
change, though.
I know, but wouldn't you think that you would want to fix the systems, create the appropriate structures and supports for these families, and then you can say, hey, now we can be pro-life, right? Because we've created enough supports where there's no reason for someone to make this decision.
But humans don't usually work like that. Like, usually you have to have a deadline in order to get anything done.
And this is the problem, and this is the same problem that's with the mayoral campaign for LA. Everything is reactive. We will have to solve this right now. This is an issue right now. It's like, actually, this has been an issue. And if we would think about the future and more preventative approaches, we would actually have a problem. But we're spending so much money, so many dollars on putting out the fires instead of actually preventing the fires. And it's just baffling to me that, like, with the amount of money and educators and people with experience, that we haven't freaking figured it out yet.
Well, that's what's tough, though, is like, there will be probably at least tens of thousands of people again walking on the streets in LA this weekend. And the centers that are caring for kids that have foster care issues and that don't have enough parental support, or economically not, that finances just aren't available for that family. Again, we keep on looking up and saying, the governors, the Supreme Court, the president. We have to solve it here. And all these people that will go scream at our Constitution will still not show up and serve the kids that they say they care about on both sides of the aisle daily.
No, that's real.
And so
that's
it's
real.
like, that's what's so annoying, is I see this passion, this rage, this screaming, saying, why don't you care? But I kind of feel like a lot of those people, and we obviously know a lot of people who will raise up those signs, you probably being one of them, that are deep in the heart of caring. So of the individuals that are watching that are deep in it, dude, I'm all for it. Like, I think that it's so important to have whatever's on your heart to be able to be impassioned and go at the federal government, go at the state government, go at the local officials. It's so this isn't for them. It's for the people that only put up a sign and only did service by marching for George Floyd, and will now only go and pick up a sign for abortion rights. And what the were you doing in the meantime?
Yeah.
So you just sit around and you scream and to ask everybody to do something, and then you're already ready to like set your next picket line out or go on your next march, but you did nothing in between. And I look at that for both sides. Like, we have to deeply engage in our communities, or this is never going to be never going to be
and
solved.
I totally agree. I don't think the government is the answer, although they have all the resources to allocate to the appropriate people on the ground. And so that's the thing. It's like they have the money.
Right.
They have billions and trillions of dollars meant to be able to help address these issues. And so in a way, we do need advocates, right? But I've seen those people. The protesters, that's all they're doing is they're going out and they're protesting. I know a few of them.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I've gone out and protested, but I'm all about the action. And then what I've realized.
And you start by doing that.
Yeah.
Like, you start by learning about the topic, caring, going in there. And I'm sure the first time that people have ever engaged in this civil unrest is by doing that. But then from it, you have to engage with communities that are there. That will be a lot of our friends that are very active. Engage with an individual that's actually active and support them.
Yeah.
Because they leave that line on Saturday and they're back in a place on Monday actually doing something.
I know.
about it.
And there are amazing people out there doing great work in communities. And that's, at the end of the day, we can't rely on the government to do anything. We have to take that responsibility and help our communities out and encourage local organizations to help your communities out. Volunteer with local organizations, because only really on the local level and in your community and in your neighborhood and that one-on-one conversation you have with a young kid, only through that can real change happen. And we do have to stop expecting the government to be the answer for everything. Now, do they have the resources, and do we need to hold them accountable
100%.
for making sure that the resources go to the right place? Is there definitely not enough accountability for where the money is going? Because it's raining. It's pouring rain of resources, but on the ground, it's actually not hitting the ground.
Well, that's what's so odd. So, that's where there's hypocrisy on both sides. Because one, I guess I got to get this out there. The fact that, Texas wants to convict people who go to other states, that is wildly f***ed up, right? So
Texas for you.
So when states have decided, you can't then dictate a person that can't go outside and go do your thing.
But that's the thing with Texas, they want full control of a woman's body, where you can go, what you can do.
But they're not thinking about it like that though. They're really thinking about it as the safety of the child, not of.
It's control. It's men in power they want more control. If they cared about the child, they would create the appropriate supports for that child. They're not doing that, though. That's not what they're thinking. That's not what they're advocating for.
But then again, to go back to the fact that the government sucks, expecting the government to be your safety net is a really difficult task. And unfortunately, it won't do it. So then what I was going to say is some of the hypocrisy that I hear is when individuals in California today are like, well, thank God I live in California. I don't live in a shitty place like Texas. California doesn't really have your back at all either. They seem like they do, but over half of your paycheck goes to making sure the kids are okay, making sure they're safe, well-educated, fed, and none of that's actually happening. So they'll let a mom abort all day because they know that takes off of the system's weight. And they actually don't give a about the kids. In the same way that Texas doesn't give a about the kids, sometimes I think some of these abortion activists on the highest level are we don't want that kid anyway. They're generally black and brown, and they don't have a chance. And so we have to be careful. And this is where it gets really oddly political. Margaret Sanger, who started Planned Parenthood, she was about eugenics. She wanted to clear out the black and African American race completely. That was part of the foundation of the organization. Mm-hmm. So we have to realize that at some of these rallies, individuals that are let them abort, they're not thinking about let me abort. They're just let that mom abort. The kids don't got a chance anyway. And so they don't give a shit about the kid from the get. They just say, well, I don't like the right, so I'm going to stay here on the left and let that black baby get aborted because it doesn't have a chance in America anyway. When that is also bullshit. Because these kids do have a chance if we all stepped up. Mm-hmm. And so the lack of faith that we have for people to be able to overcome these obstacles is sad to me.
I just think that I get where you're coming from. And I actually have heard that about Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood, and that's very disturbing that that's the foundation of where that organization kind of stemmed from. That's disappointing and disheartening. I don't think that's what people are thinking when they're saying, go ahead and abort it. Like, we don't want these children here. I think it really does come back to my choice, my freedoms, my liberties of deciding what happens to me. Now, as long as I'm not harming other people that are like alive and like my living child, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think to make a decision to have a child, to bring that child to life, should be on the woman. That's a very intimate, deep thing that someone has to go through. And it's the most difficult thing that anyone has to go through. And to be told what to do instead of being able to be an adult and make your own decision was something that's so personal, so life-changing. It's hard for me to give that freedom away. Now, I think, do we want to provide education on and support services and actually help people take a different approach to it? Sure. But to make it criminal, to then put me in jail for a decision I have made with myself and my body, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That just doesn't make sense to me, to criminalize someone for something that's already so difficult and personal.
Yeah, and and where the right jumps into this argument in this context is there's the high level right wing officials that don't give a shit, right? But when it comes back down to the Christian individuals that everyone hates today, they're only looking at this being as a person. In the same way that they look at a 5-year-old, they're looking at a 5-week-old. They're going, life is life. And so that's what's so tough about it.
But tell me what you're doing for that child that's homeless. Tell me what you're doing for the very vulnerable children. If you're doing something that's helping and these unheard voices be seen and being supported, I'll hear from you. But majority of the time, it's people sitting at home trying to make these decisions for other people that actually don't give, out these other kids, that don't want educational opportunity, that hate affirmative action, that hate all these resources that are going to, these types of communities that need the support. And so it's just, again, for me, it's very hypocritical. It's okay, you can pick and choose when you want your freedoms, who gets those freedoms. You can pick and choose when you want to support someone and who you want to support. But it's just, you can't be a hypocrite when it comes to the lives of people and saying that you care when you don't.
Yeah.
And not caring about the person who's bringing the life in. No one is listening to that person.
What does the left say about the choice of conceiving a child? So on the streets today, you would say, my body, my choice. I don't have a choice in this matter of whether my child's aborted or not aborted. But there was a choice in the conception.
Sometimes.
Well, outside of rape and
obviously, but every time you have sex, you're not thinking, oh, I'm gonna get pregnant. You might be taking other precautions to make sure you're not, and things happen. You might be doing everything you can to make sure you don't conceive.
But that risk is still inherent though, and it's obvious. Even if someone's on birth control and not pulling out, and that's like double whammy. Like, okay, you're really taking all the steps, right? Then even with that, you would still know that a child is possible in this situation. Like, that is an element
But come on, are men thinking about? It's like, oh, women, you have to think about having a child every time you have sex. But God forbid a man have to think about that, right? Like, he's not really a part of the equation, right? And that's why, see what happens. Try to criminalize having a vasectomy. Stop giving out free Viagra. Do these other things, or have more education around men and their responsibility.
Yeah.
Hold men accountable to it. But what pisses me off is that the conversation and the blame and all of that is always around the women. And the men they're not even a part of the equation in this, except they're the ones making the decisions. That's what's so frustrating.
So would the right have some level of space in this if they placed all the liability on the guy? Potentially.
I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like, that's
right?
an interesting thought.
I
Like,
mean,
what if the guy was solely liable?
I don't think it should be a solely liable person. Like, again, just the same way I don't think it should be all on the woman. Like, there has to be, it's two people that make this happen.
Yeah.
Both people are responsible, but only one is being punished.
Yeah, I agree with that. What
And
happened?
I'm not saying punish only the man. Like, that wouldn't, again, that's hypocritical. Like,
So what
that's
would
not what I'm
happen in a
saying.
context that, like, let's say you got pregnant, right? Like, where we are in our space and time.
That would be different.
Yeah, I know. But what if we were different, and what if you were like, I want to get an abortion and I didn't want one?
Well, that's where, like,
Where does that, like, what type of right do I have in that space, in that time?
No, you have some right, not all the right, and then that's where, like, conversation and dialogue are going to be important, and really planning and creating a plan for how to make it possible, right? I think if you are with someone and you're in a relationship, you have a home, like, there's a conversation that needs to be had about how to make this possible.
Yeah, but let's say, like, for example, like, what if it went all the way, where it's like,
Well, what if you didn't know the person?
no,
What if you didn't know who it was?
that's probably what is one of those things that's the typical.
Yeah, you probably don't know who it is.
But sometimes we like to bring that's the typical one. That's your normal abortion. But where the left always likes to bring up this idea of, like, what if rape, right? And the right keeps on saying, if you get raped, you can abort. Like, that's okay. Like, most.
But my problem is when it actually comes down, they say that. What are going to be the requirements on the ground? Is it that you have to file a police report? It just gets so convoluted and gritty. It's like, well, how do you know if it was rape? Does there have to be a crime report associated with this? Does it have to be reported in order for you to be able to get that abortion?
Right. So then it's like, then the government's getting into your health.
That's
That's
the thing.
like a
It's
whole
like,
other issue.
That's the thing. It's either way you go with it, it's going to be getting down into the nitty gritty. And then when you actually get down to, like, the implementation of something, and then you give the power to the wrong people, that's what I get worried about. Mm-hmm. The government going deeper into the lives of families and people.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because I agree with that in both ends. Because then, yeah, so even if you get raped, you have to prove all this stuff. But you shouldn't have to tell the government you got raped. Because then, then it becomes this huge convoluted situation.
And I wonder how many men are going to then be going to jail really, really. Because then it's like more women will have to report to even get the abortion, right? And so you're going to, like...
Yeah, well, we should
and
have...
then I don't think the Republicans would really want that then, would they?
Well, I think the Republicans would all be on board of convicting more rapists.
Yeah, I would
Right?
love that.
I don't think that they have ever been, like, on the side of, like,
But
saying rape's okay.
but the thing is, like, that's the problem, right? Like, women can go ahead and file a report. How often does a man actually go to jail? And even look at the Brock guy. The Bretman Brock guy. Not Bretman Brock. Brock Turner. Like, literally caught red-handed.
Yeah, that was
Boom.
crazy.
Out in 3 months. It's like, and then you never know the retaliation.
Do you remember
like,
why he even got away with
A
that?
woman, for her reporting a rape, someone being convicted and out, that puts her life at risk even more for retaliation. Like, there's these ripple effects that no one is seeing or understanding, that the more that you get the government involved in your personal health and life, and this, again, I'm with you on, like, you know, the government shouldn't be telling me to get vaccinated. No one should be telling me what to do with my physical body.
Right.
No one. I'm not going to let anyone tell me what to do. If I am making a choice that I believe is for my best well-being, and of course you would hope that people are making decisions based off of their understanding of what's going to keep them the safest. It's how we survive. Mm-hmm. So again, we never understand, like, the complexities of someone's life, of why they might need to get that abortion in that moment. We could never understand. And then to have the government try to understand and document and regulate, like, that's just not going to happen the way you think it does.
And that's where I guess some of my fear lies, is not of being in one of those clinics, of being aware of the gravity of the situation. Sometimes I feel like there's such a clapping on of like, yeah, sis, just get the abortion, everything's
No.
good. Like, that's what it feels like sometimes.
No,
and that's a
but
really,
that's
like,
not
that
what
seems
it
like
is.
a very scary place.
No,
Where it's like, just get it done. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it.
That's not at all what's going on in the conversations that girls are having with each other when they're about to make a decision like this.
Okay.
Those are not the conversations that are being had. It's
And,
not like,
but
yeah,
even
do
at like
it.
the
No.
Planned Parenthoods, it's like they're understanding the
No,
gravity.
it's like, are you sure? Are you positive? Like, here are your options. Here are the, like, it's like, are you sure this is the exact, like, let's really talk to you about this before you make a decision. And in girl groups, like, your friends are not like, go do it. It's like, oh my gosh, like, let's talk about this. Like, what's really going on? Why can't this happen? Like, no one's clapping for an abortion. No one's cheering. And I know that you think that the liberal left,
well,
and
sometimes
the media,
it feels like that a little
but
bit.
that's not what's actually happening on the ground. Again, this is a very sensitive, deep issue
Yeah.
that isn't taken lightly by women. It's not taken like, I'm gonna go did it. Like,
It's not like a yes, sis moment.
no, not at all. If you actually know what women are going through and the level of emotion involved with having a child and, like, reproduction, like, it is the most important thing to a woman. And it's not an easy thing. So it's for someone to go as far as, like, getting abortion, you don't understand the levels of emotion and conversation that person has had before that they got to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. You're a man. You don't get it. So
Well, yeah,
let's move on. I'm getting heated right now. And my fist might get into a ball and just find its way to your face. You're lucky you're like an arm's length away, just a little bit further. 'Cause look at that. Look with the ring finger in the eyeball, okay?
Well, this is like one of the things that this is a topic I think that we always were like, is this ever going to come up on this show? I figured it would.
Oh gosh, it came up a lot sooner.
We
Second
were
episode
cautious.
in.
Yeah, it came up much sooner than we kind of thought, but we want to continue to bring
Conversation.
our conversations to this space where you can hear the differences in its own entirety.
And to be okay with not hating another person that doesn't have the same exact view as you. He doesn't understand my perspective because I am a woman, and I don't understand his perspective as a Christian man. So we have to come into it understanding that everyone is going to be different, and I cannot expect everyone to understand what I've been through, what I've experienced, and why this shapes the way, I view politics and policies.
Right, and then you can't always look at someone who disagrees with you as an idiot, too, right? Like, you can realize that both individuals are coming from a perspective that they don't feel naive about their perspective. Yeah. Although I will claim some naiveness in this situation, obviously, for a variety of reasons, because now I can claim that I'm a guy, even though last week it seemed like on CNN it didn't matter. But, I can't switch it up on this conversation. But I think it's important to realize that, like, in a situation like abortion, this is going to be an ongoing discussion forever.
Yeah, just
This
like the
isn't-
Palestinian-Israeli crisis.
Yeah, so this isn't one of
Never
those things that's
ending.
going to get solved overnight. So lead your conversations with your friends and your family accordingly. There's no such thing as winning this argument.
All right, we gotta chat about this mayoral candidate.
Okay.
The mayoral debates and the candidates and this. We're electing a new mayor. Eric Garcetti is moving on to Washington D.C.
Yeah, he somehow got a promotion.
Anyways, let's talk about these candidates because I got my 2 cents on a few of these people.
Okay, you've been
You
doing
go first. You go first because I went first. So you go first.
No, you've been doing a great job doing some research. I want to hear what you're kind of thinking about.
I just, first of all, I am not personally going to vote for anyone that is thinking about the first thing they're going to do is like more police. Like, that's just bigger police budget. Like, Rick Caruso, like, he wrote a op-ed once where he wanted to increase sales tax in order to increase the police department. I don't think he's really, arguing to increase sales tax this time. But, out of all the candidates, I believe DeLeon and Karen Bass are the ones that are, like, just more reasonable when it comes to, like, LAPD and their budget. And not increasing it, but rather really thinking forward. Prevention. I studied prevention. I'm all about prevention. It's not about putting out the fires of today. Yes, that is important, but you have to realize that there's a bleeding wound, and until you address the bleeding wound, you know what I mean? Like, it's gonna keep bleeding.
Yeah.
So you gotta stop the bleeding first. So really thinking about preventative approaches for the future, and I really like Karen Bass's, approaches of community building, coalition building on the ground level. What do communities need? Addressing community needs on the ground level to really think about how do we prevent people from becoming homeless? What do we need to do so that people stay housed, right? Preventing more people from becoming homeless and then addressing the homeless crisis. A lot of the fixes that, Joe Bustiano has are really about building temporary shelter. There's no long-term housing approach. And what I appreciate about Karen Bass is, really thinking about some of these vouchers. There are, for example, with foster youth, 7,000 available vouchers for foster youth who are getting out of the system to be housed for 7,000. But there's an issue with available housing. There are venture capitalist groups that will build housing. We do not need more government funding for it. There are groups that are actually working on this. I am partnering with groups that are going to churches and helping churches build housing above their churches. There are amazing groups that are working on affordable housing, leveraging the available voucher programs available to homeless foster youth and families. And so just making it easier for individuals to access these vouchers so that they can get housing. But again, you can have a voucher, but there might not be a housing, complex that will accept your voucher. So that's the issue. We need to build more long-term permanent housing for people who qualify for these vouchers.
So it does seem like Karen Bass is certainly going to be leading the way for the Democratic Party in this race, right? Is there any other? Well, I guess
And Kevin DeLeon.
everybody's
Kevin
technically a Democrat, right?
Isn't it Rick Caruso? I mean,
No, Rick Caruso is technically a Democrat, which is really interesting, right?
yeah, and I get like, Rick Caruso, he kind of reminds me of Trump in some ways, right? This like very rich, very successful businessman, wants to run the city like a business. And he probably understands more of the bureaucratic BS than anyone, right? With like the different...
Because he's been a builder. He built...
and he understands the taxes involved and the freaking government money grab while you're trying to build affordable... Or not affordable housing, because he doesn't build affordable housing. He builds... What does he build?
He built the Americana up in Glendale, which is like the nicest mall up there.
Yeah, and it has housing. There's
Yeah.
apartments.
They have apartments and stuff in that.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
he also, I think he's built also some like other like major developments.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you need to have like, he makes this claim, oh, they haven't, like, none of the candidates have built anything. It's like, we get it, you built like some cute little things, but what we need is affordable housing. So what do you know about affordable housing? Like, it's definitely a different ballpark. I'm happy to work with a gentleman who is one of the largest developer of Section 8 housing, really thinking about creating, he actually has a spot on Abbott Kinney, which is really nice. And all his properties are Section 8 housing. But we need more housing. I don't know that Rick Caruso is the guy for it. Just because you built something, you haven't built affordable housing. You really have to know where the resources are within the federal state government to be able to do it, how to build coalitions and community organizations that can like help, facilitate these housing spaces. And I know that there's a lot kind of happening in South LA as well. I don't know if you saw, there's just that new school. It's a school like for Foster. It's like a what is it called when it's like a dorm style high school, but around it they're building all this like development around like stores and grocery stores, and it's like a marketplace, but also housing, and then it's also a school. We need more things like that are innovative, that are creating these community spaces, that are providing access to healthy food. So it's not just this bougie little shopping center. No, like we need real strategic coalition building, community building efforts on the ground, understanding what communities needs, creating and building things that the community needs. And I just don't think Rick Caruso really has those relationship building skills.
He definitely is. It's so interesting. So they're all Democrats
because everyone hates him on his staff.
So everybody up there is Democrats, but Rick Caruso is definitely a Republican candidate.
Yeah.
On all facets of everything that he's talking about.
He wants to remove government restrictions on building, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's kind of experienced that firsthand. And
he has good points on the fact that you can't actually build affordable housing because these small governments aren't allowing it. And so he's like, if you actually opened up this funnel
100%.
of funds, people are ready to build, you actually aren't all allowing it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think there's definitely, but I don't know. That's very much on the city level, though. Mm-hmm. That's the city level. I don't know if that's like the county level.
Yeah.
Like that's very much city council based. The city councils are determining. Now, does the mayor have even the ability to remove these?
Well, it's funny. So he would be the mayor of Los Angeles, the city, right?
Yeah, not.
But still, that's what's so confusing about LA is you certainly have power in
limited
all of it. Because like Santa Monica would have its own mayor.
Yeah.
And all of that.
Has its own
but
mayor.
Everything kind of still leans towards the mayor of
so I guess
all of it. Feels like you're the mayor of LA County.
But when it comes to that building housing, it has to go through the city council. It's the city council that's deciding on if housing is going to get built. And I know this because I'm actually trying to build affordable housing right now in Hawthorne. And it's through the city. And it's like the community has to be on board. The community has to want it. There can't be any rejections. Like before investors even invest in these properties, like there has to be unanimous support from the city. From that like small city, Hawthorne, I think has like its own city council. Like every city has a little city council. So that's where I don't know what rights he has to be able to remove these bureaucratic barriers to building housing. I don't know what right he has. So he could be talking. You know what I mean?
I lean towards a guy like Rick Caruso on just the scope of things, being a little bit more conservative. I do caution his lack of like empathy in some of this stuff because he does seem to like he was basically the president of the police union or something like that, right?
Yeah, he ran a police station. I'm just a big fan of Karen Bass. I just think she's really thinking about the future. She's thinking about prevention. She's thinking about the communities and building relationships, coalition building, bringing organizations together to be able to help create real impactful change on a community-based level. I know that she's been doing the work, and I know that she knows. She also was the only one that mentioned these voucher restrictions. She actually can help remove voucher restrictions for these, these vouchers that can help get people housed, low income, foster youth, right? And making sure that access to those are easier. But again, it's not just the access to it, because there's people who are sitting around with vouchers right now who can't find housing. So it's a matter of convincing landlords and these housing developers that people with these vouchers need to get placed in these homes. And that's why there's a lot of groups that are doing affordable housing where you're required to have a voucher to live in these spaces. And they're building on top of churches and community centers right now all over the state. It's just a matter of making it easier for those types of groups to be able to develop affordable housing. But there's groups that are ready to do it.
And she certainly does speak with a level of compassion and but also a very like solution based like plan.
Yes.
So there's so much to her that she's easy to trust. You just hope she can get it done. And not to say that her as an individual can't get it done, but can you actually move the system? And
I think her
Caruso's
track
the only
record-
person who's been outside of the system.
Yeah, definitely he is. I just think that she has enough experience within all levels of the system, from the ground, community-based level, to like being a physician in an emergency room, to, the highest level of being in Congress, right? And so I just feel like she's the most experienced, the most compassionate, just speaks with so much knowledge and mindfulness about what this role would entail, and like how she would really think about the future of LA. And again, not just putting out the fires and criminalizing poor people, but like what got them there? How can we stop this bleeding? Like, what do we do so that in 5 years that this is addressed? Like, that's what she's thinking about.
Yeah.
And no other candidate is thinking that. They're all very like immediate. I need to do something now to make it look like I'm doing something. And that's why I just do not like Joe Busciano. He cannot even execute a community grant. If you can't execute a basic community grant, and we've witnessed this, I've heard, I've conversations with these community organizations, and I was up there with them when they were grabbing these big fat checks on Juneteenth.
I mean, yeah, he had this
and people still haven't gotten that money.
Big event in Watts on Juneteenth. He brought everybody out, any community activist, any person who runs a social program, any community leader, any high school graduate or individual that's moving on to college. He put them on stage.
I really like his chief of staff, though. She's great.
And really danced these checks around. He gave out like maybe $1.5 million that day, where, you're shaking it, you're holding it up. And what's also was so difficult. So to fast forward, the money never came.
Yeah. So let me even give more detail. What happened was there was a lack of communication from his office in helping these recipients understand how to navigate city policies and practices. He couldn't help people understand how to navigate city policies and practices around getting the funds. He himself didn't understand how to navigate city policies and practices for these people to get the funds. It took them, some people just got it, and they have till June to spend it. Some people, if they were lucky enough, finally got the money. It's on reimbursement, and they got to spend it within the next month. And so the fact
and also don't just graze over the past. It was reimbursement. So you actually had, if you get a $300,000 check, you have to spend $300,000 and then have faith that they're going to give it back to you.
And then that might take a month or two for the reimbursement to hit.
But if it took 9 months to even activate
his inability to communicate directly with these individuals, right, help them navigate these city processes in order to help their organization. No, it was very performative. It was a big old show, make him look good right before his mayoral election, and I'm just not into it.
And I mean, if you can't get that done, you can't be
You
the
can't
mayor
get
of LA.
anything done. You cannot. If you can't get that done, you're out.
That's why it really does come down. I really only think Karen Bass and
It's gonna be
Caruso
between
even
those
have a
two.
chance. I think with both individuals, we're okay, and we have a space that we're going to move forward. But then again, we're going to need to backfill it with the efforts of people that are empathetic and caring on the back end. Because even if Karen Bass is instigating all these programs, don't just cheerleader from the sideline. Get freaking involved. And then when and
Get in
if,
there.
and I think Caruso does win this because he is addressing homelessness from a space of, dude, we have two homeless problems actually in LA County. We have transient, drugged up, and mentally ill individuals that are chronically stalemated, which is going to take the heaviest lift of all time that I don't think the government can do. But also, kind of, there's a few individuals that don't even want help, would never actually take a bed, don't give a fuck about people, don't want to be a part of normal society, and are very rigid. Like you can be as empathetic and charismatic as ever, and you see it mostly in like areas like Venice, where these are nomadic wanderers hyped up on meth that
We've seen them.
that won't. And I am friends with some of these people.
Yeah, he is.
They don't give a fuck, dude.
Yeah.
And they're never gonna care. And so there's that. But then the problem, what happens with that individual is they mask seeing all the young mothers that are unseen.
Yeah.
And so I do think there has to be some clarity that a mayor creates within what type of individual of homelessness are you experiencing? Are you a nomadic drifter wanderer that is subject to probably creating some violence and creating issues and fucking just a problem? It's not just an annoyance. The individuals are more than that.
They're hurting people. It's a problem.
How can you protect society from that individual and then also protect and build a building blocks for like a young mother with like 5 kids who
Yeah.
needs a house?
Yeah, and I don't think that one person can be the answer for all of that. I think we have to realize that like one mayor is not going to solve every homeless person's getting off the street. It's just it's going to be impossible, and it's a high expectation that we shouldn't be putting on one individual. Now, do they have the ability and resources to be able to create major headway? Yes. How they do it is important. Joe Bustiano wants to criminalize people and put them in jail. He was talking on this interview right here with the LA Times. Mind you, he really doesn't know how to communicate well. Like his interview with LA Times was
Well, he tries to get tough.
he
tries to be like,
it's bad. It's like if you can't connect with people, you're out. You're done.
well,
But,
he thinks that law enforcement's the route to cure
that's
this.
his only
And
experience, though. That's the thing. He only has experience in LAPD and thinks that is the solution for everything. And it's like, that's part of the problem, not the solution.
Well, and again, like, even if you're a Blue Lives Matter person, why would we force our law enforcement officers to do this work? This is not law enforcement work.
No, this is triage team.
Yes.
Like we saw that group of 3 people approaching that homeless guy, and they were like, "Hey, let's get you some water. Let's get you water, and then we'll have a talk."
Yeah.
You
The
know what I mean?
officers don't have the capacity or time to do this. And we don't want them to have to.
Okay, they also don't have any of the trained compassion to like and patience to deal.
They're
with
just
this.
not built for it.
No, they're built to like
And we need them for different
get
stuff.
like the robbery guys. Like go do that. Go find the real crime. Stop ticketing people for smoking weed. Stop putting young black men in jail for possession of marijuana. Stop doing these things that are actually not helping. Go find the real crime. Kid get shot. Go find that person. Stop standing around looking at each other laughing. And I'm talking about stuff that I have personally seen, officers do. And it's just frustrating. It's like, go solve the crime. Go act. There's crime really happening in this city. But for some reason, it's always just like a responsive, reactive approach to the crime they're seeing. And they're sometimes I feel like spend their energy on the wrong things.
And so also what like a Joe Busciano promotes is this idea that community safety partnerships, the CSP, which is in his district, is working. So he pilots and says, look at what we've done. We've created the way to do it. This isn't even close to the way to do it. It's not even close.
And from what I've heard, pre-COVID, it was a little bit better. They were actually engaging in conversations with residents. Post-COVID, it has gone back to being LAPD. There's no difference. There's no community relations. The only difference is that now they have to, they're, you know, engaging with people. But what upsets me is that they'll go to these events and everyone's like, look, they're here at this event. They're engaging with people. It's like, no, the real work happens on the ground, talking to people, building relationships, like coming in soft clothes and hanging out with the kids. It's like, and that's not happening, but they're getting $1.7 million from HACLA every year to do it.
And I'm a Blue Lives Matter guy, but these dudes that are on the ground in Watts suck. They're not well intended. They're bad people.
They're just the same as LAPD. There's no tell me what training they've taken that has qualified them for such a community safety partnership model. You know what I mean? And I'm asking UCLA because you all are helping with the training and development of this. And I know there's some training coming, but why is community not a part of that conversation?
Yeah.
Right? Why is community members not, and not just the one or two community members that you all have chosen and that you all are paying and employing, but actual people on the ground? And that's because they don't actually want to have those voices in those spaces. We have tried on multiple occasions to host community conversations with CSP. And every single time that we have tried to organize these community conversations, they tell us, don't invite the community. Only the staff at the center. Don't invite the community.
They can't hear what we need to say.
And I'm like, the community, we are not the community.
It's so inappropriate.
We are the facilitators to bring community voices to the table. And every time they do not want to hear community voices. I actually have an awesome photo. I'm going to try to pull it up in a second. Because
how many times have they've pulled us aside, say, hey, plan a meeting. And look, we came in naively, chipper, excited. We're going to help with just trying to build connections, blah, blah, blah. And with community members being like, all right, we'll give it another try. And then a community member will come in and talk and end up leaving the room. And they're getting like eye rolls from the cop.
I have the perfect photo that explains, and you can see in the body language of the officers that they are so disengaged, mask on, hats on, glasses on, like completely disengaged. I'm like, these are your community safety officers. Like, these are the community builders. Like, what the F? And what's so unfortunate is that, you know, Amada Tingariti, who's the head of the Bureau.
She's awesome.
She's great. And even Captain Whiteman, he'll answer my calls when I have something to say. And so you get these few individuals that are like really, you know, try their best to model the spirit of the law and what community safety partnership is supposed to be about. And
they do live and speak it. Like, those individuals 100%. Are engaging.
But there's
they
something
give a shit.
That's not trickling down to the actual people enforcing the law.
Because what's tough though is where Amada is the perfect person to be at the top of this, which she is. She oversees it all. Every dude under her switches jobs so quick, they're not even able to build relations.
Yeah.
So even in the short 2 years that we've been on the ground, we've seen how many different faces? 3 that have been captain?
And they're supposed to have a 2-year commitment, but
we've seen, the overlap's been quicker than that though.
Yeah.
And so then you get these new dudes on the ground that are like, I'm just trying to clean up after the last guy. I'm here to rechange.
I don't know
here
how
to
they got there.
it.
They probably didn't get any training, and they see it as, I'm an officer. I'm not CSP. I'm an officer. It's like, so what the fuck are you doing here then?
And then they continue to have this type of level of engagement with the community where they aren't willing to put out their hand first. Where they say, I need the community to care. They should trust me immediately. Blah, blah, blah.
They lost my trust.
And they're like, well, these kids just don't give a shit.
Why.
The difference is these situations have been around for a long time. This divide between these communities, black and brown communities
Been here
in
forever.
South Central LA.
Me and you are not gonna fix
Of
it.
course not, and would never expect to. Would only hope to be a trickle of salt to change the flavor. Now, but they aren't looking at the context that these children are born into this and these officers are sworn into it. And so it's not a fact of meeting in the middle. They have to reach across and make it happen. You cannot transfer trust.
No.
And so, like, I can't go into this community and say, hey, everybody, this is my buddy from Minnesota. You'll like him too because you like me. That trust isn't transferable. And so these officers, all on an individual basis, have to be able and willing to build that trust. It's because the department as a whole doesn't have it. And then so I'll say statements like, hey, you all have to really start working on this trust factor. And obviously a naive white guy from Minnesota saying like, hey, we need to work on trust. That sounds crazy. But even if I just say that sentiment, they'll say, LJ, that's a really broadly reaching statement of saying that this community doesn't trust us. And I'm saying, unfortunately, it is that broadly. And they're like, well, you can't just sweep with a broad brush and say that. It's a universal
they can
truth.
call all the kids gang members. Like, all the kids are gang members. Like, oh my God, you all are the biggest hypocrites. I've literally had them like point towards a group of boys and be like, those are all gang members. Like, actually, you don't even know these kids' names. You don't know that kid is going off to college. You don't know that this kid is doing this. Like, they don't even know because they haven't built the relationships, which is literally what they're getting $1.7 million per year from Hackla to do. And I throw that number out there because they're supposed to be doing programming and mentorship. Well, guess what? They are using the work of other nonprofits who are doing that work, showing up to events, taking a few photos, and claiming it as them. And even claiming overtime. Yeah, overtime. That's how they get their money. You know that $300,000 salary that they get? A majority of that's from overtime. When I've asked the captain, the previous one, where does the money go? Police enhancements, overtime, for mentorship. Guess what? They're lying about the mentorship they're doing. And I say, let's give the money to the community. Let's give them money to the people who are actually giving their lives to helping this community out.
And it sucks because I do think they're incrementally getting better. Like, I do think from where it was 2 years ago to where it is now, it's better. But there's still such devastating things that happen that prove it all can slide away so fast. Where, like, there will be a bullet in a body of a young kid and the cops immediately take sides. They don't care about the body on the ground. They only start thinking about just adding more police presence.
It's crazy. I'm going through some of my like photos and I have videos and videos of young kids getting arrested for trespassing.
And we have yet to see
multiple like videos of just young men just in their own community being labeled as trespassers and the cuffs go on. What pisses me off is that on the CSP website, it's like the conversations come before the cuffs. That's a lie.
That's a straight up lie.
That's a straight up lie. And I've seen it myself in real time. And I have videos to document it. And so it's like, just be what you're about. If you're about community policing, if you're about building relationships, and then we're going to hold you accountable. If you're telling everyone that you're doing this and this is what you're getting money for to do, don't be mad at me when I'm asking you about the relationships you're building and how you have conversations, in these public forums.
And just for having direct conversations with these police officers of saying, this community doesn't trust you guys. This isn't going well. We gotta look forward. We have to get better. They have threatened us. They've put us behind closed doors. They've said the FBI, the DEA, they all know about you. We're going to send OGs after you. You're going to start getting arrested when you show up. Just by having this conversation.
Literally.
Now, this might be a little blunt, but that's just like, that's our culture. But it's also important to be direct. And so I'm going to say, if someone, I'm like, people don't trust you. They're like, dude, if you just even keep on saying that, I'm going to have to cuff you. It's like, what are we talking about, yo?
And for letting them know that the child that they were arresting is from the community and was employed at the center, that was intervening in their investigation. I can be arrested. It's such a bullshit model if you're not going to actually implement it the right way. I think in theory, it's a great idea. I think in theory, the idea of being able to just have more direct contact and access to these, captains and chiefs and having their numbers, I think that model is better. I think everyone should be calling the police and being like, what are you doing? Like, I saw you do this. Like, that's wrong. Unfortunately, even with that ability, like, you still can't prevent a young kid from being cuffed and put in jail for possession of marijuana in California in 2022.
And I will give them credit for that. When we're in Watts, we don't have to call 911. We can call the captain, and they do pick up. Or you can call the sergeant or whatever the name is, right? Like, all the individuals that in that pecking order of line, I don't know their titles, but I know their order. They will pick up the call.
Yeah, sometimes.
And so that's there. But the response...
It's the same. The thing is, it's still the same issue. It doesn't stop actually the issue. Just because I can call and complain and they're like, I'll be a sounding board for this. The issues are still there.
Yeah.
That this community is completely over policed. That the black men in this community are already criminalized from the get, regardless if you've done anything or not. And that there's just this unfair injustice that's happening around this model of policing that's happening, that's about building relationships and having conversation. Cool. The person at the top is having conversation, but none of the people on the ground are having conversation. There's like one, maybe two that we know that are actually having conversations. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like out of 12 or 20, like, what are we talking about? What is happening? Where is the gap? The community should be voting on who's allowed into this program. The community should have a say whenever there's a new CSP officer. There is none of that happening.
It's so odd being so hated by some of these cops.
They hate us.
They hate us.
If they're watching, I know you hate us. Great. Love you too.
It's so weird just being so hated.
It's just weird that we're the problem. It's like there's literally crime happening. Like, what are we talking about? You're spending your energy in meetings with Chief Moore talking about us? We are not the problem. There's real crime happening. Go solve the real crime. Tell me who shot the 17-year-old. Tell me who did the shooting at Markham Middle School. Go figure that out. That's your job. But you spend your energy on people like us who are just reminding you to do your job.
I mean, we've never stopped handcuffs going on a kid. The only thing that's ever really happened is that handcuffs will go on a child. We will ask why. They will say trespassing. And we'll go,
littering.
And we'll say,
littering.
This kid lives here.
This is our event.
This kid lives in this neighborhood. You know it and I know it. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we don't know if he lives here. We got to check his house somewhere. It's like, well, he's here every day. And they're like, well, he could be violent.
No, you
He's
are the
14
violence
years
that are
old.
being. You are the violence.
Stop it, dude.
That you're bringing this level of tension that can be brought down.
And it's so odd in a community that does have so much violence in it, of the way they're addressing it. Like, it's obvious, like, who could be on the fringe of having a situation that's going to blow up and be very bad.
And if you actually knew and had the relationships, you would know. You would actually be able to step in front of it. But they don't have the relationships. They're not willing to have the relationships. They don't even know how to have a conversation with someone. And there's a handful of officers that can't even look you in the eye when you say hello.
Yeah,
and it's crazy.
How odd is it, though, of the kids that are on the fringes, they don't get arrested. It's all of the other kids.
All the good kids. They're all good kids, but like it's the kids that have nothing to do with anything, and they're the ones getting cuffed.
There's never a time that like a kid gets. I mean, it happens sometimes, but it's very rare that a child gets arrested, and you go, "Well, that kid was asking for it." You know what I mean? It's always crazy. Like the kid that you're like, how did you arrest this kid, dude? If you had any awareness, this is like totally the wrong kid. They don't have
any awareness. They're just like, I just got to book them. I just got to get them in our system. That's like what they're thinking. It's like, oh, they go after those kids because they already got the other kids in their system. And they need some new fingerprints in their system. That's why they're trying to get all these young black boys in their system. And I've seen them do it. And it's so messed up on so many different levels, y'all. Working on pushing them, holding them accountable, but hopefully finding some solution to be able to diverge some of these situations. I actually signed up to be a mediator with this group in Compton. So and they actually work with LAPD and teach them like how to like mediate and how to divert. They actually can diverge situations where they can make sure that the kids don't go to jail. There's actually a pathway where they can do that. This group literally I'm talking to, who's a new partner, is like, yeah, we train officers in how to diverge so that youth don't go to jail, that the youth can go home and get a citation. We train them on how to do that. You think they know how to do that, but they actually need training and help because they don't know how to do it.
Well, they're so bad at their job that they're either blind or evil. It's either, I would take the position of, you're just bad at your job. Because if you're doing your job well and you're doing what you're doing, that means you're doing it evil. Because or you're blind. Because they just can't hit the nail on the head.
Oh, gosh, it's just like, all right, y'all. I think we've chatted a lot here today.
Well, this is Purple Politics. We are going to be coming at you hopefully weekly.
We're getting there, working on. We're getting married this summer, so give us some grace.
Yeah, but thank you all so much for coming out. This is brought to you by Purple Banter. Love you all and God bless.
No, I don't feel you and I could relate. Oh, I'm sick and tired all of these conversations. Oh, I kill the noise and give a boss a damn break. East side, west side, New York to LA.